So what is happening is this Lucasfilm civil war has now gone really, really intense behind the scenes. And I know there, you know, I'm going to say this: there are definitely people that want Ms. Kennedy out, right? And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I would be shocked if that didn't include Mr. Chapek, who's a bean counter, right? Who's like, this isn't good for our finances, this isn't good for the shareholders. How do you do that politically, especially in the current environment with the, with people are afraid of the woke crowds, right? They have to find a way to do it. So I think the telltale sign will come if you start getting sort of the rumors spreading like they have been spreading with Amber Heard, which is the leaks being set out in some way degrading Kathleen Kennedy's reputation. The moment one of those comes out and you start hearing people saying nasty stuff about Kathleen Kennedy, rumors, that's when the kill move is being prepared. And I think that's coming.
On March 11th, Forbes, an outlet which is read by Disney's shareholders, major investors, and all other stakeholders of any note, dropped a proverbial nuke on Disney's senior management. An article titled, "Disney's firing of Gina Carano is confusing and hypocritical, lacking sound management." And that's just the headline. What follows may be one of the single most condemning articles of Disney ever to see print. And it comes from a publication that is far more influential than any of the industry-only trades like Variety or The Hollywood Reporter. What is more, this is no random article that came about because the writer had a quota to fill. On the contrary, this has all the hallmarks of a commissioned hit piece. The writer even deleted his Twitter, which I think is the equivalent of the Enola Gay being instructed to deliver its payload and then run like hell, lest they be caught in the blast. In this video, we'll dig into this article and see if we can't find out what it may really be about. It begins with the author stating, "I've been sitting on this article for a while, allowing my opinion to form. That's something that many companies don't do enough these days. Instead, they often rush to conclusions too fast, yielding to the views of a few vocal members of the community rather than allowing time and consideration to inform decisions." Already there, Forbes is calling Disney out for catering to the #FireGinaCarano Twitter mob. Carano's triggering Instagram post is then addressed, in a diplomatic wording in which emotional reactions are respected, but reality considerations preserved. An exaggerated comparison? Yes, but enough to fire her? Doubtful. She's more guilty of a bad comparison. Gina should have likened today's conservative cancel culture to the 1950s congressional hearings held to expose entertainment people who were members or sympathizers of the Communist Party. That's a better comparative. Ironically, when Disney fired Gina for her opinions, it inadvertently proved her point. That's a harsh burn right there. Forbes just stated that Gina Carano was kind of on the money, and it continues. "We can disagree as to whether Disney was justified or not in firing Gina, but one thing is clear. Disney's management of its social responsibility persona is woefully flawed. To begin, the company's approach is confusing. Many assert that Pedro Pascal, star of The Mandalorian, offered similar analogies that Carano did, though with a liberal bent, when he shared a now deleted Instagram post comparing Trump voters to those nasty people in Germany in the 40s. Pascal kept his job. Carano did not. Disney's inconsistent approach led outsiders to suspect that Disney leans left, something that CEO Bob Chapek denied at the recent shareholders meeting by stating, "I don't really see Disney as characterizing itself as left-leaning or right-leaning, yet instead standing for values that are universal. But management cannot afford to treat employees differently for similar actions. It makes Chapek's comments appear disingenuous. The company needs a universally consistent approach for its universal values." That's another really harsh burn right there. Before we move on, keep in mind that Bob Chapek was not the one who fired Gina Carano. The Hollywood Reporter has already confirmed that decision was made by Lucasfilm and didn't go any higher than there, but that it was made above Jon Favreau, which is code for that Kathleen Kennedy did it. But neither Kathleen Kennedy nor Lucasfilm are mentioned by as much as a word in this article, which may be strategic. Bob Chapek, Disney's CEO, is the one being put on full blast by Forbes for all of Disney's stakeholders to see. It is the comments he made in the same shareholder meeting where he also stated how happy he was with Kennedy when asked if he wasn't going to fire her soon that he is being called out for. That this isn't mentioned might not be a coincidence. But Forbes isn't done yet. Disney's actions also appear hypocritical. At the same shareholders meeting, Bob Chapek went on to say that Disney believes in values of respect, values of decency, values of integrity, and values of inclusion. And we seek to have not only how we operate, but the content that we make reflective of the rich diversity of the world that we live in. And I think it's a world that we all should live in harmony and peace. That's a noble goal, well said. But while Disney shapes and declares these aspirations for US consumption, it turned a blind eye to China when the company shot Mulan in the same Chinese province where the government forced, well, basically where they acted like, those nasty German people of the 40s. Disney went on to thank several government bodies in the film's credits. This signals that human rights and social responsibility are fine as long as they do not cost Disney any money in important markets. Disney never had an adequate response. Up until this point, it is fans that have brought up Disney bending over backwards to the Middle Kingdom. Now, Forbes are confronting all of Disney's stakeholders with it. The article also references a poll conducted by Public Opinion Strategies, which found that 72% were of the opinion that Gina Carano's firing was unjustified. Not great numbers for Disney there. Forbes also had some dire warnings for them. As companies cancel people for their opinions, it feeds a dangerous cycle. The more they cancel, the more they embolden the mob to target more people and organizations. Then repeat. Disney and many other organizations are playing a very dangerous game out of fear, partisanship, and/or misplaced sincerity. The beast they helped to create and indulge may eventually devour them. This is of course something that applies not just to Disney, but even so, Disney are the ones in the hot seat, and Bob Chapek is called out by name. Now granted, he's called out all the time in YouTube videos and blog posts and stuff like that, but that can be ignored. This is Forbes calling Bob Chapek out in a way no other CEO in Disney history has ever been called out before. This article alone could lead to the end of his reign at Disney. Unless he acts, of course. Because that is what this article is calling on him to do. So, how should he act, now that his back suddenly has been pushed against the wall? By all accounts, he wasn't even involved with firing Gina Carano in the first place. So what should he do? On March 17th, writer and producer Kamran Pasha returned to our tri-weekly live show, Midnight's Edge in the Morning. He had some thoughts on what could really be going on behind this story.
Well, first thought is that this is, it's interesting the timing of it coming out, because the Gina Carano being let go drama was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, right? And in media time in the modern day, that's decades ago. The average person isn't talking about it anymore. They were talking about it for about a week afterwards, and she was on, various shows, Shapiro, etc., talking about it, and then life went on. So it's very interesting that about a month later, and a couple of weeks after this investor call, suddenly this pops up, right? And so to me, it's very. This isn't an arbitrary thing. This is very much a planned attack. And we can discuss and debate where the attack is coming from. But this is very much a planned attack meant to rile up, investors against the current situation at Disney. And so then the question arises, who is planning this attack and what is their agenda? People have called me a conspiracy theorist. It's because I've worked in the industry long enough to see conspiracies with my own eyes. That's how things work, right? That's how anything works when large amounts of money and a few people are got together. So my instinct is, because I believe this is an organized attack, my instinct is that this is a combination of disgruntled people inside of Disney, and that could be very high up. In order to get to Forbes, you have to be very high up, right? You can't just be some random low-level VP who's unhappy about the situation. Some pretty powerful people are unhappy about the current situation, and they've allied, in my view, with investors who are unhappy with the situation. Now, all of this is being done behind the scenes. The investor call from a few days ago was very surprising, because you had multiple people raise questions about Lucasfilm and mismanagement situation there, and that's generally not done on these kinds of calls. And so the fact that happened means that there is very seething anger within the investor base, and we're not, Disney doesn't care about somebody who's got 3 shares on E-Trade. They care about the hedge fund and other institutional investors who own hundreds of millions of dollars worth of stock in Disney. They're the ones that actually have influence in it. This is coming from a very high level. When something's out in the trades, that can be organized by any sort of mid-level person within a Hollywood studio, right, who has the contacts. When it's coming at the level of Forbes and that kind of attack, that is someone attempting to shake up Disney, and I believe from within, allied with people who are losing money based on the way things are happening. This is something that is causing, I'm sure, severe consternation inside the board itself at Disney. This is very embarrassing for them. And what I believe, in my conspiratorial view of this situation, those inside of Disney that facilitated this article, that conspired with it, because I don't believe this is just some journalist sitting there in a news bureau coming up with this independently. I think there's other forces.
No, someone got a couple of phone calls from people at Disney, and they probably got so many that it's like, okay, there's much more to this. And Kamran, like the people where I don't want you to mention I'm in it, keep this, confidential. Yeah. And he probably got so many, the author probably got so many corroborating stories that it's just like, okay, look, there's something to this.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it works. I used to be a journalist myself. I've dealt with journalists here in LA, and the story is the end result of many people trying to make it happen, right? And that's what this is. And it's put Chapek in a position where his leadership and his place in history of Disney is now in question amongst the investors. So now he has whatever leverage Ms. Kennedy has over the system. It's now about personal survival, right? And that's the option that basically the people behind this have given him, saying you can keep protecting her as Mr. Iger did, and can lose your job and be blamed for all of this because she's not mentioned in the article, or you can do what the old Hollywood tradition of pass the buck, this time to someone who deserves it, and remove her from power. This is an effort to remove Ms. Kennedy from power, because they're telling Chapek it's you or her. This is a bubble that's being pricked here and the only way it could be pricked is by people who are part of the club. Forbes is the spokespersons for the club, right? I don't know if any of you have seen that movie. I just saw it this week in a theater, with theaters open up in Los Angeles, News of the World, which is a really wonderful movie. It's a Western with Tom Hanks, but it's an unusual thing where Tom Hanks plays essentially an early news reporter. He goes from town to town in the Old West, bringing newspapers to people who have no access to information outside the little town, from Dallas, Austin, all these places, and he reads the newspapers and tells them what's going on in the world. And there's this wonderful moment where he comes into a corrupt town run by a sleazy boss hog type who controls the town, who prints his own newspaper. And he has Tom Hanks try to read it. Hanks instead basically, flips the situation. But the point was that guy was creating propaganda, and the only one that could actually stop him was someone within the club, which is Hanks, right? And so that's what this is. We're facing the rise of the reaction within the cocktail party, saying, thank you for saying that nice speech. You're messing with my pocketbook now. I'm done. The ultimate conspiratorial thing of this would be if this was actually coming out of Chapek's office himself, which I said to Stephanie Janasek, right? Because now he's being portrayed as the villain. And you're like, why would he get himself portrayed as the villain of the story? Because it gives him the cover to do what everyone in Hollywood understands, which is pass the buck, right? And so no one in Hollywood would blame him for covering his butt and removing the person that's bringing him this kind of drama.
Aha, so it could be a game for the chess. So it might not be someone else within Disney.
Because Chapek is at the level that Forbes would do this. I mean, that's the amazing.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, yeah, a call from Chapek's office or from one of his minions is enough to set this in motion. And this, I said from the beginning when this happened that the reaction to Gina's firing, because that was a shot across the bow at Disney's final effort at profitability with Star Wars and Jon Favreau. I said that's going to create a Machiavellian response to remove her, because she is acting in such a blatant, straightforward fashion. The way to remove her has to be Machiavellian, and the ultimate Machiavellian thing is to sacrifice your own name temporarily in order to remove the person that's creating drama for your bottom line.
Well, if it does come from his office, then they can just send like a new article later on redeeming his image. Like news cycles are short, so that's like the thing there. That right now they can put him in a position where he has to act, then he acts, and then it can be like a resurrection story.
No one will blame him. No one will say you did this because you are misogynist, because all they care about, they don't care about what the investors think. They care about what the people at the cocktail party and think, right? And so as long as the other Hollywood moguls will not mock him or blame him for acting, he's going to be fine. And that's going to cover him.
Is this, am I wrong in thinking that the money people are asking the same questions? What's your plan? I'm like, and if, oh, well, we're going to transform Star Wars. I'm like, but how is that? It's like Shark Tank. How is that going to make me money?
But you see, if you hit the issue, Rob, the money people already know that they had a plan in Favreau, right? We know that. So people who are sitting around making models, who are making $25 million a year on Wall Street know that even better than we do. And they have the contacts inside the company to confirm it, right? And so they knew that Favreau was putting on a track. They saw it in the rise of subscription to Disney Plus. They saw it in the global reaction to Luke Skywalker's return. They saw it in the Baby Yoda toy sales. They saw it in the Gina Carano toy sales, right? So they knew there was a plan, and they knew that this was someone subverting the plan for their own personal ego. They know what this is, and so they saw this coming. So this is very much a system going, man, we had this back on track. We were going to make money on this. A year from now, this was going to be in the black, or on the path to being on the black at last, after almost a decade of being in the red. And you're messing with it for your own ego. And we know what this is about, because we're all egomaniacs ourselves. So we know what this is about, right?
So just to,
thanks for clarifying that a bit.
To kind of also to add to that point with the parks perspective, last time I was at Disney Springs in December, you go into all the shops, there were nothing but Mandalorian gear all over the place. People in line with not one or two pieces, I mean, several pieces of stuff from the Mandalorian. You didn't see anything from the sequel trilogy at all. If you did, you maybe saw one or two toys hidden somewhere, but it was all Baby Yoda and the Mandalorian, and people were buying it up like crazy. So messing with that.
That's what happened here.
The bread sputtered. And that's why I said it was over. The moment I knew it was over, because I said, Disney's finally made this work. Favreau has fixed this. I subscribed to Disney Plus the moment I heard Luke was back in a respectful way. And then I unsubscribed from Disney Plus the moment Gina was let go. And so I said, I was so happy that Disney had figured out how to get this back on a path of success and profitability. And the people who are invested to the tunes of $100 million were even happier than me. And they knew more about it than me. And so the moment this happened, I said, this is it. This is going to be the revolution. This is when it's time to remove the trouble from the system. And that's coming. And that's why I said it's over. Right after everyone was like, oh my God, Star Wars is destroyed. I said, no, Star Wars is going to go through a little bit of chaos. And then this disease is going to be removed, because the people who are losing money from this problem are not going to stop.
Here's the thing, though, that in order to fully fix this, that's going to take a lot. But to begin with, it's not enough just to remove Kathleen Kennedy. They have to remove Pablo Hidalgo. They have to remove every single person that was loyal to Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah,
every last one of them has to go. Is there any chance that that's going to happen? Can it be like a complete wipeout? Because I don't see any other way.
I mean, Kennedy is the only thing holding it together. She's the finger in the dam, right? You remove the finger, the whole thing collapses. None of these clowns have any protection. I mean, nobody cares about Pablo Hidalgo in the system. Nobody cares about these random losers at Lucasfilm. Nobody cares about them. That was one of the last tweets I put out there before I was pulled by Twitter. I put out a tweet to Lucasfilm employees because they had been messing with me and sending, a fake accounts to mess with me in the day before. And I said, all you Lucasfilm employees that are messing with me, just know that no, you have no future. No, your resume is meaningless. Because I know from powerful people who said to me, I'll never hire a Lucasfilm employee. Right after what they did to my friend Colin Trevorrow and all of this, and so their careers are done, and they're too delusional to understand that Kathleen Kennedy doesn't care about them. The moment she won't be humiliated in this. They will give her a nice production deal, a nice package. They will give her a bunch of awards, a nice farewell ceremony, and then all of Lucasfilm will be wiped out. It's going to be a complete chaos moment because the moment the finger out of the dam, they're done.
That is very sobering to hear, because it is kind of like what you said. You predicted that the signs are going to be articles calling into question. I believe like the initial prediction was Kathleen Kennedy, but again, this is even bigger and more powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And the way this is actually more than I would have imagined. This is higher because I wouldn't have imagined that they would have taken a shot at Chapek, right? But then like I said, that's an accelerant. Taking a shot at Kathleen Kennedy and revealing some of her competence in the trades was what I thought it was going to be. I never imagined it would be Forbes taking a shot at the management, at the upper management, and of Chapek himself. Mm-hmm. That's beyond what I expected. That's a nuclear attack. And that's why I said, okay, well, then this is over, because you don't need to have any embarrassing articles about Kennedy come out in the Hollywood Reporter. You just need him to act to save his ass, which is all he's been put in the position to do now.
Yeah, because like this basically was a carte blanche. This allows him to do anything needed, because I would imagine every other studio head, everyone else in the cocktail parties that he started attending after being promoted to the head of Disney, every single one of them is going to see, you have fire under your feet right now, and you need to do something here. And we'd all do the same in your position.
Exactly. I mean, I was shocked by this article, and I said, okay, this is it. This is, and that shows how dangerous the game was that Kathleen Kennedy was playing. This was a game that I think she overstepped in her confidence when she let Carano go, and then they started doing this aggressive attacks on me, eventually having my Twitter pulled, and then we saw within days of that, we saw the attacks on the character of Jeremy Griggs and other YouTubers, right, calling them racists. All of that is being orchestrated by the Lucasfilm people. Those are not the actions of confident people who've won a war. Those are the actions of people that are terrified and afraid of any source of problem for them, because they know the ground is shifting under their feet and they're trying to take back control. That's what we're witnessing.
Kamran also had a prediction of what may come next.
The next step in this process of transformation and removing Miss Kennedy from Lucasfilm will be the appearance of articles in the financial papers, not the trades, the financial papers. They may appear in the trades as well, but it's primarily the financial papers, which will show the financial problems inside of Disney related to Star Wars, Lucasfilm. Once those start coming out, the pressure on Bob Chapek to let Ms. Kennedy go and to transform Lucasfilm will become very public. And the only way for them to remove Ms. Kennedy is for there to be such a public investor uproar that they can cover themselves at the cocktail parties and said, look, Kathy, this wasn't personal. It was my job or yours, and that's how the game works, right? I would never have done this to you had I not been pressured. And these damn journalists were out there putting all this bad stuff about Lucasfilm. I had no choice. So that is what the finances, it's going to be the way that they change the situation. They'll reveal what everyone already knows, which is that Disney is major financial trouble because of Lucasfilm mismanagement. The very fact that the Forbes article talks about mismanagement reveals that.
Or if I were to draw an analogy, it's like how they got Al Capone on tax evasion.
That's a perfect analogy, and that's exactly what you do when you can't. when the system is brought up, the reason they couldn't get Al Capone on mass murder was that he controlled the judges, right? He had bought off the judges and he controlled the legal system. So he was protected. And he had created an entire strategy that that the federal government was like, there's no way out through this. How do we do this? And then one smart accountant inside the Treasury Department said, get him on taxes, because that's the one thing that even the corrupt judges that he's paid off can't get around, right? And because that's the one thing that will cause public outrage, uproar. Everyone hates paying their taxes, and this guy isn't paying his taxes. Well, screw him. And then that puts political pressure on the judges to do what needs to be done, which is what was done. That was utterly brilliant because it understood where the nation was, and understood the populace, and it understood the corrupt system and how it could be moved. And that's exactly what we're facing here. The people inside of Disney know the system is corrupt, and they're like, and they know that Miss Kennedy has gamed the system to her advantage for a decade. They're like, well, then if that's it, then how, if we can't use the system and remove her, how do we pressure the system to do it internally based on its own levers? That's what's happening here.
Let us know your thoughts on all of this in the comments.